morning, everybody. Welcome to Devil's Advocate Trades Edition. Today I am joined by Mike Martens, who is the president of ICBA, and super excited to have you here, Mike. Tell us more about ICBA.
Great to be with you today, Lisa. ICBA is a new chapter of the largest construction association in Canada, established in British Columbia over 50 years ago to defend open shop construction companies and contractors. And we provide all the services to help those companies grow and be successful, including group health benefits, training, wellness programs, and advocacy. And we've now established ourselves in Alberta. We have about 200 clients and members, and we have a new office in the Eau Claire area of downtown Calgary, and we're pleased to be in Alberta.
I love that. I love that. So explain the differences for like someone like me who's part of like the Calgary Construction Association and you guys, because you guys are similar, but not quite the same.
Yeah, we do a lot of similar things and we have a good working relationship. But in general, the industry associations are divided into three categories. There's the geographical associations, obviously headed by the Alberta Construction Association and each of the cities, Red Deer, Calgary, Edmonton, and they represent contractors of all types, usually ICI, in those cities. And then like the residential sector is kind of represented by a slightly different group. In Calgary, it's Build, might be Haven in Vancouver, and all of these others. And they're all part of the Canadian Home Builders Association. And then industrial contractors are kind of a set aside. Then you've got the trade contractors, which of course, there's the ARCA, the Alberta Roofing Contractors Association, there's the Alberta Painting Contractors Association, mechanical, and all the others. They are trade by trade, and mostly those are about certifications, right? So the painting contractors are making sure that anybody who does painting is up to a certain standard. And so they lobby the government to make sure that those regulations are established. We have a much more broad mandate. We represent all the sectors. We have residential contractors, we have ICI, we have industrial. We've got the full spectrum, and we're across the province. So the only thing that distinguishes us, and sometimes I call the associations in our pool the ideological or the labor association. So we're the non-union contractors. So anybody who's non-union, all the way from residential, from industrial, is part of our community. Then there's the CLRA, which is the Construction Labor Relations. They're the association for the building trades associations and the traditional unions. And then there's the progressive contractors who represent the CLAC contractors. So those are kind of the three ideological divisions, more based on labor relations as opposed to the geographical or trade-centric associations.
That's a lot. It's a mouthful. But I think what you guys are doing is amazing, so that's awesome.
Thank you.
When you and I first met, we talked about lots of different things and how you guys are kind of more on the corporate side where you're helping owners. And you guys have a different understanding of what an owner is versus someone like me, who's a consultant kind of at the ground level of what an owner is. So maybe we'll just kind of hash through that. So your idea of an owner is what?
Owner is the owner of a project that needs to be built. That could be Joan Smith, who wants a renovation project in her basement, or it could be Shell, who's building a $20 billion LNG plant. It's the person who's ultimately paying the bill. The government of Alberta can be an owner. The city of Calgary is an owner. They're the ones paying the bills. Then there are the contractors. And so usually a general contractor or the prime contractor is the one contracted by the owner. Now, for the bigger the project, the more there's something called an EPCM, an engineering, procurement, and management firm that will come in. And EPCM often involves construction as well. And sometimes conglomerates will get together. Large engineering firms will get together with a large construction firm, and they'll do it all together. But sometimes they'll just hire an engineering firm to manage the project, and the engineering firm will hire the general or the prime. So these are all different ways of managing projects. And of course, the smaller the project, the more direct the relationship is between the owner and the contractor.
Okay. No, that's fair. It's pretty much the same then as to what I do. I deal with the person that's the stakeholder of the entire project. That's the person that's paying for it, right?
That's right.
So when we were talking, you had said that, like, I told you that we were going to do kind of more of like a conversation. So now that we kind of
Yeah.
understand what ICBA is, which is great, thank you for letting us all know that, because I think it's good to get it out there, because there's different levels of construction that I'm always so encouraging for people to be a part of. Because when you're on the ground, you don't really think about anybody else other than like your boss or a sub trade. You don't realize that there's a lot of other moving parts in the construction realm. So I always like people at every level. But yeah, what are some of your, I guess when I went through the list with you, I was like, we can talk about so many different things. What
Yeah.
do you want to talk about today?
Oh, well, I'd say like how ICBA serves the construction industry would be great. And I think an important distinction, just to lever off what you just said,
Hmm.
I don't think there is a construction industry. There is such a big difference between the residential construction industry and the industrial. They're pretty much not the same thing. They have almost no overlap in workers. They have almost no overlap in owners. They have almost no overlap in contractors. They are completely separate. The regulatory requirements of each industry is separate. Now, the commercial, civil, institutional, that is where you start getting overlap between those two poles. Those are two very large poles. Like in the industrial sector is really large dollar projects. And residential can have some large dollar projects. Maybe some of them would get up to $1 billion, probably not. Whereas most industrial projects are over $1 billion. And so residential can also go down to a $20,000 reno job, so it's very small and minute and very different needs. The trades, sure, there's electricians, but the electricians doing residential work and the electricians doing industrial work are completely different electricians. The carpenters are very different. There are a few exceptions, and pipe fitters and stuff like that. So you mostly got your mechanical, your electrical, and your carpenters doing your residential with a little bit of civil work, the people preparing a large development, let's say the roads and the infrastructure for that. So I think the key message there is there isn't one construction industry, and too often representatives of the construction industry want to talk about like a homogenous whole. And it's just not. And it does a disservice to each of the sectors. They're all very important in their own right. This is very important from a policy perspective. When we're talking to construction, we say the needs of construction. That's irrelevant. Anybody who's ever been involved in real estate sales know there's no such thing as a Canadian real estate market. There is no such thing as an average Canadian house price. Vancouver and Toronto are so high that they skew the average house price significantly higher. So so that overlaps with the nature of construction. Construction is very much local markets. The Calgary construction market is very different than Edmonton, which is very different than Fort Mac. And so you can't really overgeneralize, or you can overgeneralize. That's the problem. We do overgeneralize. We talk in broad strokes rather than saying what is the needs of the construction industry in Fort Mac or Edmonton or Calgary. What are the needs of the industrial sector? What are the needs of the residential sector? And that's something that we really get into. We understand that and can speak to those differences. And I think that's an important thing for anybody in construction to understand.
I think that's a great point, that when you're speaking on the construction industry, that you should kind of more or less elaborate on what area of the industry you're speaking to. That way you can have a clearer response of how those people are doing. Because, I mean, to me, how I've always understood it is it comes down to task based, right? So if you're an electrician versus a master electrician, there's going to be more education, there's going to be different things. But then there's also, like you said, industrial electricians, and then there's residential electricians, and then there's commercial electricians. They all have a different task and they see different things. So I know that if I pull an electrician out of a residential area and threw him into an industrial, he would have a learning curve. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
And so, like, one of the major issues in construction is workforce development, and many people in construction, not all, believe and say that we're having a hard time finding workers. Some people are not finding a hard time. And we
Mhm.
have to make a distinction. Okay, well, which ones are and why? We know in the housing sector, if they had more workers, they could build more homes. And if they could build more homes, housing prices would probably be more affordable in the long run. And so when we look at solutions for workforce, we need to say, well, what are the solutions in the residential sector? That's a very different question than workforce solutions in the industrial sector, where you're looking at minimum 4 years of education in order to get your red seal, because that's really who the industrial sector needs. Commercial, high-rise residential, and of course, single-family units, they have a very different need and therefore very different solutions. And I think anybody who's advocating for workforce solutions in construction needs to understand, and hopefully we can change the language around that.
Good point. I appreciate that. You're not wrong. I mean, like a lot of times people will just group everybody in under the same umbrella when there's not problems in certain areas as there could be in others. So that's a good point. I appreciate that. When we talk about labor shortages, because it is something that's circulating around Alberta, are you saying that the industrial side is not having a problem finding workers?
It depends what kind of projects they're doing.
Okay.
I think the shutdown, turnaround, and maintenance sectors are always looking for more workers, whereas the operational crews, and obviously right now, there's very little new projects. There's just no investment in the industrial side, and therefore those guys aren't looking for workers. That just makes sense. There's no work. But on the shutdown turnaround side, when they have to refresh a large project, those guys are very much looking. But those are different workforce, so it's almost more trade by trade, and for lack of a term, their experience levels. I honestly, I don't know the data because nobody's talking about it this way. I'd say, how many first year welders with pressure B tickets do we need? As opposed to, we just need welders. Well, a first year apprentice is much different than a 10-year to 15-year veteran with a red seal. And I would say almost universally right now in the industrial sector, we're saying we're missing the middle, just like in the residential sector. Often in city planners, they say we have a missing middle. We've got lots of single family units and we've got high-rise apartments, but we don't have the smaller enough duplexes and quadplexes. That's what's missing, the missing middle. Well, in construction, we have a similar thing. We're missing the people with 20 years experience with a red seal ticket. Those people are retiring and they're being replaced with relatively junior people. So in the industrial sector, there's very much a big gap of those people who could be supervisors and the supervisory. We're missing those. And that's something ICBA focuses our training on. Just coincidentally, we do a lot of gold seal training, which is taking your people who have a red seal and moving them into middle management positions, either an estimator, a project manager, or a superintendent or supervisory role.
Okay. So with that being said, because I'm on the ground and I've worked around those boys that are 20 years in, 25 years in, would you not say it's fair to say that maybe they're being overlooked or they're being utilized incorrectly? And also, a lot of them don't like to do the paperwork. They're not proficient in it. They're proficient on tools. They'd be really good at training. They'd be really good at being the superintendents on site, where they could still pick up the tools and train their crews and the greenhorns that are on site to ensure that they're doing the job correctly. Because a lot of those guys are still swinging hammers, or I hate to say this, but they're pretty tainted because they've gone off the old school regime for the last 20 years. And now there's this new school regime where it's like, sensitivity training and all this, and they don't have time for it. And they're just like, I don't want to get into the politics of office. I'd rather be in the field and dealing with the crews and dealing with constructing. So what's your thought on that one?
Yeah, very good point. And this is something that I talk about often, and this gets into the productivity question.
Yep. And
construction has very much been challenged as being a productivity laggard, where like you could say $20 billion in investments in new technology in construction in the last something like 5 to 8 years. And there's been zero productivity gain. In fact, productivity continues to decrease. It's one of the worst productivity performing industries. And again, this is where it's very important to say which part of construction is lagging in productivity, and most people would say all of them. And there is some things that all sectors of construction share, and that is a higher regulatory framework. So that's one element. And you mentioned some of them. And look, there are some very important, well-meaning policies. Let's call it diversity and inclusion training. I'm sure there is room for the culture of construction work sites to improve and be more welcoming and open. Sure, for sure. But turning that into a regulation that now people have to follow mindlessly, now an hour every morning, and often at the end of the shift, you're having tool time or lunchroom talks, coffee talks, making sure, hey, every day, like, I'm not sure that's necessary. That's new. Like 10 years ago, that was not happening. So now you're taking 2 hours out of a 10 or 12-hour shift, and you've just reduced your productivity by 20%. Excuse me. And look, that's a well-meaning, important initiative. The problem is when we turn it into a policy and make it every day we have to talk for an hour about this. One, it's going in one ear and out the other. Is that really the most effective way of implementing this initiative? And I use that word initiative in sense because as soon as you turn it into a policy, now it means this amount of time in every day, and every worker's got to do this, and we got to have sensitivity training, and we got to do this. And that's the problem with policies. They often don't get to the heart of the matter. And if you're talking about the heart or culture, that's a different story. That's where you got to bring people in and saying, I was affected negatively. And so can we just change our hearts and sensitivity towards people? Doing it an hour a day probably isn't going to be that effective. And that's just one. Then you've got policies that change the whole way companies do business, like the carbon tax. This is something that affects everything. Now companies have to report on everything. Every truck, we got to report how much gas they use. Are they efficient? This is all reporting line items that are reducing the efficiency. Is protecting the environment important? Of course it is. Is that the best way of doing it? I would argue that if you want housing, for instance, to be more affordable, if you want to attract more investment, this drag on productivity is killing us. So your original question goes to there's guys being overlooked because they don't want the headaches of management. And I totally understand that, and I sympathize with it. Part of the problem is the regulations and policies we've brought in that are just massive headaches. Instead of just allowing people to focus in what they're good at and helping them do a job, we're now expecting construction workers to initiate social change. And I think that's an unfair request. That's not their job. And there's probably better ways of going about implementing those initiatives.
I tend to agree with you. And so here's the thing. So as a past safety officer, so we call those tailgate meetings or safety meetings. And I used to make jokes all the times when I used to see the guys standing around. I was like, oh, you're having a safety meeting? Because if you're not working, you're safe. So I used to make those jokes.
Yeah, exactly.
But, so I don't know any companies that are doing it the way you've said it, but then I'm also someone who I'm focusing on how I integrate those types of meetings. I don't have them after work, or after the site is, shut down. It's you leave for the day. I don't believe in that. I'm not taking any more time from the guys than I need to. I think that also creates a bit of, it's not boosting morale by any stretch. If anything, it's depleting it because they're tired. They don't want to listen. They're not going to hear you. But in the mornings, those meetings should not be an hour at all.
Yeah, right.
Like you lose their attention. And then there has to be, for me, if I have really important things to say, then I get them out right away. I make sure everybody signs their document to say that, yes, we're having this meeting. Yes, you're in attendance. These are the things we're covering. Science tells us that it needs to be repeated 7 times before somebody actually hears it. So that's something that where the repetition will come in. Absolutely. It gets annoying. And I know that, but then I know you know it because I've said it 20 times. It's also, I think, on delivery when you're dealing with these meetings, and I appreciate the productivity standpoint of it. But like I said, an hour is far too long unless there's items that the group wants to talk about because there's a problem. And then they're like, hey, Lisa, we've got some problems. These are our problems. But let's say 4 of them have it and 15 of them don't. I cut the other 15, or I say, do you guys want to be here to hear what the issue is and how we're going to work through this? Or do you guys want to talk about it tomorrow once we get to the bottom of it? A lot of them will cut. They'll be like, no, we're going to go do our thing. Tell us tomorrow what the result was. And I'm like, okay. Which is also another aspect, right? Because when you want everybody to partake, sometimes leaders people identify as leaders forget to ask their staff. We have a problem. I think it's really good for you guys to hear it. Do you want to hear the outcome of it tomorrow and what we did, or do you want to stand here? Most people, especially guys that are in the construction, realm, when they're on the ground, they're like, nope, we'll hear about it tomorrow. They don't want to stay and listen to it. They don't have time. But giving everybody the opportunity to have that conversation and being able to pick out your people and knowing them of which are struggling, right? Because like you said, you want to put people at their strengths. If I'm seeing that there's 3 or 4 greenhorns that are struggling with their supervisors because their supervisors are fast paced or their supervisors are not interested and they want to milk hours, and these guys are go-getters, I'll switch them around and I'll have a conversation with their managers or their foremen saying, hey guys, what's going on here? Like, why these guys feel like they want you to challenge them more. They want to learn the job and you're kind of stunting that. So why are you stunting it? So I think it's just understanding your people on site too, and what they want out of it. But the guys that are being overlooked, it's not even that they're being overlooked for the positions that are being given to people that, I hate to say this, but they're chair spinners. So the guy that's the superintendent on site got the job because once upon a time he worked on a construction site and he's got some fancy degrees, but he doesn't deserve that role, nor does he understand the constructing aspect of it. So I think that's where you get, and these guys that are in their 40s and mid 40s and even 50s, they're tired. They want off the tools, but they don't want to take their thumb off the pulse either. They want to make sure that the site continues to move at that level. Doing the meetings in the morning are fine for them. They don't have a problem with that. Making the guys sign off are fine. Training them is great. Knowing that they can pick up their tool and train is a great way of, giving back to them and saying, you guys have put your 25, 30 years in. You're the best person to train these people and to make sure things are still moving. And if they lose a guy on site, they'll jump on the tools and do it with them. They're not scared to get in the trenches with their guys or their girls on site, right? So there are lots of men and women in the trades that are prepared to stop being on the tools every day. Their bodies are breaking down. They're constantly moving all the time, but the amount of knowledge and skill that they possess should be presented to all of the people that are now coming into the trade. Because here's the thing, a lot of them that are in that 40-50 range, most of them aren't, for lack of a better term, they're not assholes. They're going to listen to people. They're going to hear them differently. They don't really care if you're male or female or what you identify as. Can you do the work? Great. What do you need help on? What do you need? Here's your instructions. They're good with delegating. There's a lot of them out there that are being passed up because of these guys that are chair spinning because they have a couple of degrees and they worked on a construction site once upon a time. And that to me is depleting. And a lot of builders are doing that. So you talk about the building, all of these different, types of multi-family dwellings that need to start being erected. And this is what the builders are doing. They're putting the wrong people in the wrong spots where it doesn't make any sense. And then things are getting double dutied, or then you're putting all of the pressure on that 40 or 50-year-old on the site to run the whole site while the guy is getting all the glory and all the pay. And I'm like, no, that's not fair. So what do as an industry, what do we do to help those people or to help those owners? Because at the end of the day, like you said, it's privatized. They'll do what they want. You don't like it, there's the door kind of attitude is what's happening. So, I mean, go ahead.
So 2 points on that. A recent report put out by the Alberta, no, it's a think tank. I can't remember, Western Canada Foundation, I think, Canada West Foundation, pardon me. They put out a report on productivity in construction that addressed this point. In their opinion, and they didn't touch on this directly, but in general, they said the biggest drag on productivity was poor communication. Mm-hmm. And it could be poor communication from an owner to a contractor, or vice versa. For instance, the owner might think they know construction, and they say, we want the following project built. And the general contractor looks at this as, this is crazy. This is poorly designed. We're going to make a killing on this because there's going to be so many change orders. And so we'll put a low bid in, knowing that the design work and the layout isn't going to work. And later on, we're going to have to come back to them and saying, oh, it didn't work. We're going to have to put in a change order, and the end project will end up costing a lot more than the original bid. And that's how they make their money. That's poor communication. Ideally, the contractor would say, hey, we're uncomfortable bidding on this project because it's poorly designed. If you want to come back to us and pay us to review your design so that it's more efficient, we'd be happy to do that. That would be good communication. That's at the high level. And then you're talking about communication at the lower level. Perhaps the contractor is not doing a good job of saying to this middle group, this people who could be middle managers, and not saying to them properly what we need. I can say that, and I don't have a lot of information on this, but the contractors I've talked to who have shared with me the situation you described, they say the problem is we need middle managers to be business minded. That's awesome that they're good with the workers. That's awesome that they're good with safety. We want those things, but we need them to be business minded. We need them to be thinking about how can we be more productive? How can we do this job better, more efficiently? And the big problem they find is a lot of workers don't want to work more efficiently. That they are driving productivity down and not necessarily, this is of course not across the board. So I think the problem is they're not communicating with each other. Perhaps the middle manager, if given an opportunity, could educate the contractor and saying, hey guys, I know you want more productivity, but if you push it the way you're pushing it, you're going to lower your safety. You're going to lower retention. People are not going to want to work for you because you're driving them too hard. Here are some solutions we could do. And by the way, this is something in the open shop that we talk a lot about versus union jobs versus open shop jobs. Union jobs have some very strange policies. The joke in the open shop circles is how many people does it take to fix a leaky faucet and a broken light bulb inside a bathroom that has a 2x4 in front of the door? And the answer is something like 6, right? When you and I could go do it ourselves. If that was in our house, we could just fix it. But on a construction site, it takes 6 people. You got to have an estimator come in and look at it. And then the safety job person's got to come in and evaluate it all. And then everybody's got to wait around for the laborer to come and move the 2x4. And then the pipe fitter's the only one allowed, or the plumber's the only one allowed to fix the leaky faucet, even though anybody could do it. And then only the electrician can come in and change, and of course you got to have the carpenter bring in the ladder and hold it so that the electrician can, it's just ridiculous. And these are the kind of things where construction companies are asking the workers, we need to win jobs. In order to win jobs, we need to be more effective and productive. And they're looking for workers who want to think that way. And I think the problem is the contractors not building a good relationship with those workers. And so the workers are like, why should we? You do so many stupid things. You planned this dumb. The supplies didn't come in at the right time. And so there's a lot of communication there, whether it's supply chain issues, whether it's how the labor force is organized, all of these issues. But Lisa, I wanted to ask you, as a safety professional, I've been looking at the Alberta Construction Safety Association website and their statistics in construction. More and more time and effort is being spent on safety every year, but I don't see the safety metrics changing at all. Why do you think that is? And again, let's not lump all construction sectors. Is this a unique, is the problem in a particular sector of construction? Maybe residential's got a problem and industrial doesn't. Maybe something else. But from your experience, why, with all the attention on safety, are the numbers not getting better and in some cases even getting worse?
Well, it's a great question. There's 2 things that I've experienced. So I don't highly focus on safety as much anymore. I do a lot of safety documentation and helping people get their safety in order to have CORE, right? So the certificate of recognition. The biggest problem I have, and I have had on sites, is owners not wanting to spend the money. They want to say they have it. They've spent the money to get the manuals. They've jumped through the hoops for CORE, and they only really focus on it when they need to do their external audits. And then they have their internal people doing the internal audits where there could be a few things, but I watch them catch up on paperwork and whatnot. I mean, I've even been guilty of having a guy catch up on a few, on a week of paperwork. To make sure that we have everything in there. It's fair. I'm not going to sit here and call somebody else out when I know that I've done it at one point, saying like your paperwork's not in, you need to get it done, which isn't a good thing. But OH&S are the ones that dictate that. I've got I've got a really great contact in OH&S, and that would be a great question for him. Maybe I'll pull him on and ask him that, because I don't know why it would change, why it wouldn't change as much, other than the fact that it's getting worse simply because people don't want to do it. People don't like safety. You've got two different types of people. You've got two different types of employers that are very safety driven, and some that are like, just do the bare minimum. And I'm kind of in the middle with safety. I don't think you need to go crazy with it, but I don't think you should be doing the bare minimum. I want everybody to go home at the end of the day. And if that means we have to take an extra 5 minutes, because we talk about the productivity. Productivity goes down when you have to start reviewing all of your safety. All these documents have to be filled out, pre-use forms, LFHAs, PSIs, they all have to be filled out. That takes time. Then you have to make sure that you're going through each of those items on your piece of equipment, because we have a pre-use form. So if you're driving a skid steer or an excavator, all of those things have to be, you have to check everything. You have to make sure everything's in working order. They have all the right chemical levels in them and whatnot, right? So make sure the arm works, make sure they have all the proper parts and attachments. These are all things that take time. So you're filling out this documentation, then you have to have a safety meeting after you're done filling out your documentation, submitting it to the safety officer, which I once was. So then you're doing that. Then you have to make sure you have your tickets. If you don't have your tickets, you're not allowed to work. So I've had guys come to my site saying, I'm going to jump on the aerial lift. I'm like, cool, where's your aerial lift ticket? Oh, I don't have one. I did it at my last job. Sorry, can't touch it. Well, I'm the only guy that knows how to drive it. I'm sure you do, but I can't let you drive it because I have to protect everybody here. And if OH&S rolls up and says, where's your ticket? Because they can ask for it. I have to produce it. And if I don't produce it, I get a fine. Then the GC gets a fine. Then the owner gets a fine. And he's like, oh, so now, but then I've got the owner of the GC calling me going, why are you holding this up? And I'm like, your guy doesn't have a ticket. Find me somebody with a ticket. So these are reasons a lot of times why safety either falls to the wayside or why it's not getting any better, why you're not seeing those change in numbers, because not enough people are participating at the same level. If everybody was participating at the same level and taking safety seriously and doing it for not just themselves, but for their workers, not just doing it because the city of Calgary wants core, city of Vancouver wants core, whatever. They're doing it because it gets them more jobs, not because they're actually doing it, not actually maintaining the safety program to the capacity it should be maintained. That would be my opinion on why it's not changing. Yeah.
How long has core been around?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know. A long time.
At least a decade, maybe two.
I would say 2 decades.
And that's what I'm saying is that, look, everything you said is so valid. It's super important that safety cannot be a matter of checking boxes and getting work. Safety has to be an attitude as I care about workers. Yeah. I want them to go home well at night. I want them to sleep well at night. I want them to come back the next day excited about work and full of energy and having clear attention. Of course, a contractor it can't control all the elements. If a worker decides to go drinking all night long and comes hungover the next day and it can't pay attention, that's where mistakes can make. And this is something that I have argued against in provincial policies. For instance, there was a case, I can't remember, it was 15 years ago, but in that range, there was a Supreme Court of Canada challenge where random drug testing isn't allowed on work sites. I'm like, how can that be if you also want safety? So you can't force a company to enforce safety if I can't know if my workers. So then we create this whole system, and I can't remember, you probably remember the name. There's a name of it. It's something about awareness, in that supervisors are supposed to kind of look for signals if somebody's maybe not fully alert, maybe if they're hot. Fitness for duty, right? And so instead of just doing a test and walking on site and going, no, you failed the test, you're not allowed on site.
Yeah.
And, instead of just doing that, now we're forcing supervisors to somehow read into people's signals and, mystically, I can tell you're not. And then you've got paperwork and you've got all this other shit. This isn't another example, excuse my language on your podcast here, but we're in construction. This is a classic example of why are you shifting the risk onto the contractor? Why not create you cannot come on this site if you're inebriated or otherwise drug induced.
100% agree. I
But
have an
we've
answer
got
for
the
you.
Supreme Court who says that's a violation of privacy. So this is the stupidity of the system. There are efficient ways of handling it, but instead of doing that, we force people who are not psychologists, they are not medical health professionals, but somehow they're supposed to determine if somebody is in a positive mental state and is fit for duty. Uh,
So I have an
this is
answer for
crazy.
you.
Yeah.
I have an answer for you, Mike. You're going to like this. So there's two things. Number one, companies have really bad planning. I'm sorry to say this. They do. Their scheduling ideals do not coincide. They will have contractors bottlenecking each other. It is insane. And then they have everybody coming to site at the same time. And I'm
Yeah.
like, why is my delivery for drywall coming at the same time as my concrete? And they're
Right.
like, oh, well, I'm like, they're blocking all the roads on like
Yeah.
residential, for example. Residential is horrible for this.
Yeah.
And but then here's the thing. Then everyone's getting browbeat to get it done, get it done, get it done, get it done. That's what it
Yeah.
is. There's no communication because it's just, they're still in this hierarchy, archaic line of thinking of, we said we'd have it done in 3 months. I don't care what it takes, get it done. So then you've got the managers on the ground going, holy shit, I'm going to get in trouble. I got to get this done. So then the managers are now no longer the fun-loving leaders that they're supposed to be, because they're, like the old saying, right? Shit rolls downhill. So they're sitting there going, I need this done. So they're screaming at their guys to get it done. One of their guys is like, hey, I didn't get a chance to get my safety done. Guess what the manager says? No problem, do it later. No problem, do it later. Whereas on my sites, when I'm dealing with stuff, so I'm a very different person. I actually shoo their bosses away because I'm running that site. I'm basically, like I was telling you, kind of like an owner's rep. So I'm the one that stands on the side of the stakeholder and helps them make the decisions and helps run their site for them. So if I've got a team of multiple contractors on my site, so I don't act as a GC. So you could have a GC who has multiple contractors on the site, and the head of the GC company comes walking onto my site, I'll turn him around. I'll walk him off that site and be like, do not mess with my guys. I don't care what your problem is. I won't pay you if you come on this site and piss them all off, because that's normally what happens. Normally when the boss comes on site, he has nothing nice to say. It's always something stupid. So I tell them to get off my site. I'm like, do not piss off my workers. And they're like, whoa, I pay them. And I'm like, and I pay you. So do the math.
Yeah.
I want these guys to be fit. And most men and women in trades do really well with appreciation. And I make sure everybody on that site at every level is appreciated, is acknowledged, and is provided different types of incentives individual to that person. There's some people who want to work later. They want to work later. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to get you some breakfast sandwiches. I'll grab you a bite to eat after. You just tell me what you want, burgers, whatever. I'll get it for you. I'm not the pizza party girl. I'm like, what do you want? So I'm going to feed you something of sustenance if you want to stay later, because they like staying later. But then you've got people who are like, I got a family, I got to get home. No problem, Joe. Guess what? You've done a great job this week. We're on schedule. We're on target. So you go home Friday at 2. Have a great weekend. Yeah. And they're so appreciative of that. Most of the guys, if they can take off at 2 or 3, they will on a Friday. But that means that they've had to work their butt off from Monday on and ensure that there's no, and I will go and I will, open up sections where I think there's corners cut. Like I will tear open anything. I'll pull drywall off a wall if I don't think that they've done proper caulking on the back of it, like fire caulking and whatnot. I'll be like, what are you doing? Don't cover this crap up. I'm like, or sometimes the drywallers will cover up like electrical components, and I'll grab the drywaller and I'll pull his whole sheet off. And they're like, you didn't have to pull the whole sheet off. And I'm like, but you had to mark out where these electrical components are, and you didn't. And now I have to take my guys to go and play. Where's the wall unit? I mean, that's not fair. So I'm like, come on guys, do your job. So I don't come in. I'm like, you don't want me to come into your workspace and tell you how to do yours? Then do it. You're smart. It's just encouragement. It's reminding them that their laziness is not going to get by, that we all have a job to do. And I tell them, we're on a schedule, but I have given you guys so much leeway on your schedule that no one's bottlenecking. You have time to do the work properly and do it once and right the first time. So don't worry. I'm not going to browbeat you to get it done, because I've given you that time. So I'm realistic. And that's the other thing you said, and this is what makes me so angry. It's why I created my company to begin with. But when you said to me, you were like, their communication is poor. And so what happens is they see this poorly, designed, idea, and then they go and deal with it waiting for it. That to me is disgusting. You should be telling that person, and I've done it where I've looked at plans and people are like, oh, my designman says it's only going to cost me like a few $100,000. I'm like, that's $1 million project. What are you talking about? You're moving bathrooms. You're moving light fixtures. You're adding floors. Like, who in their right mind? Like, this is like you're building. This is more than just a single family dwelling. Like, this is way more than that. Like, and those are like $400,000 or $500,000. So I don't know who's telling you this, but they need to stop telling you that. And then I'll tell them, you have to rework it. What's your budget? Does this work for your budget? Because that's the other thing. If people don't know what your budget is, and I hate that because I've seen it so many times where I've seen people come in and bid, and they'll bid on everything. And that's the other thing I hate. I hate when people do scope creep. They're like, oh, well, we're bidding on the renovation of this project. It's about, $1.5 million, but we've taken every possible consideration into it. And it's like, I didn't ask you to do that. So that's why there's change orders. I asked you to bid on scope. So you're putting in other things that you are assuming may happen. I appreciate the foresight, but don't bid on it. Come down and bid at what the job is worth. Then you've got guys it's the predatory pricing. They come in way under. And then they're going to make all their money. So you got a guy that comes in at 800,000, you got a guy that comes in at 1.2, and you got a guy that comes in at 25 or 2.5 million. Guess what? The guy that's bidding the 800,000 gets the job. By the time he's done, he's made 2.5 million.
Yeah.
And that to me is disgusting. I don't like that. That's predatory pricing.
Yeah. Lisa, I want to give you the last word. I have to jump here to my next call. Yeah. But I think you raised some excellent points there. And I think this is why more and more the contractor as consultant is having an important role. Somebody coming in and talking to the owner of the project, whether it's Jones Smith, who's doing a renovation, or Shell, who's building a large plant, is coming in there and saying, here are the characteristics of a job well done. And this is how to put out a tender document. This is how to procure well. To me, that seems to me one of the biggest problems. And then, of course, there's still the execution side. As you said, if you've got cement trucks clogging up the road so your other suppliers can't even get in onto the site, these are the important planning processes that I think more and more technology can be helpful, but you still need people who know how to use that technology. Lisa, thank you very much for our conversation today.
Thanks for being a part of it, Mike. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.